Now, Ottawa is putting more than $1 billion into its plan to combat the impacts of COVID-19. For more on this, let's bring in employment lawyer Jon Pinkus. He joins us from Toronto. Jon, thanks for taking the time to speak with us.
Good to be with you.
Now, we just heard earlier Jagmeet Singh, the NDP leader, saying that the EI measures aren't enough. Do you agree with him?
I agree that they're not enough in the sense that they are not going to do very much to encourage people who should be taking a sick leave to take a sick leave. And I think that it's incumbent on the province to think about some changes to what's required in order for employees to justify a sick leave in order to incentivize people to do that.
Now, Jon, I do want to ask you, does it go far enough? You said that there is a procedure in place for people to get it. It went down from 2 weeks to 1 week, and now they won't have to wait at all. Is that going to help?
Improvement, and it is similar to the measures that were put in place during the SARS outbreak about 17 years ago. So that's a positive development. But I think the thing that we need to remember is that a lot of people aren't going to be entitled to that regime in the first place. And one of the main categories of people who are going to be exempt from that or ineligible for that, rather, are going to be people in the gig economy, so to speak. So people who work for Foodora, people who work for Uber are not going to be paying into EI premiums. And if that's their primary source of income, a reduction in the 1 week waiting period for EI is not going to help them if they're not going to be entitled in the first place.
So then do you agree with what Jagmeet Singh has said in terms of that the government should then provide that money directly to people, specifically people who don't have sick paid leave, as you mentioned?
I don't know if that proposal is necessarily the right one. I don't know if that's going to be practical to implement. And I think it's incumbent for all the political parties to think creatively about how we can protect these workers. And it may not be an easy solution because this is something that requires a ground shift in how we think about who is an employee and who is not an employee. So I'm not going to say that's necessarily the right way to go. And I'm also not going to say that the changes that have been made are not going to be helpful, because certainly any change that is made to make things easier to apply for EI will help the vast majority of people who are employed and properly classified as employees. But we do have to consider these people who are left behind.
Jon, thank you for your insights. Employment lawyer Jon Pinkus.